Tuesday, we'll get started. Welcome to today's webinar. I hope you enjoy the content and all of the experts we have here sharing their experiences. And with that, Frederick, I'm going to hand things over to you and let you get started with today's webinar. So I'll make you presenter. You should be good to go.
Right, let me pick the right screen. Should be this one.
Yes,
yeah.
I got you.
That's it. Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you, Leslie, and well, welcome to all of you to this webinar today about challenges and success in urban wood. My name is Frederick Laleike. Leslie introduced me. I'm the moderator and also a presenter of this webinar today. And we've got quite a schedule here. Let me see how that works. Should be there. There it is. So I will start by showing you some of the results of a recent urban wood business survey that my student Kyle Kapp, an undergraduate student here at NC State, and I conducted over the last months. Then we have Ben Christensen from Cambium Carbon, Henko Viljon from Nile Dry Kiln Systems, Randall Williams from Fireside Farm and Sawmill, and Damon Barron from Carolina Urban Lumber. And there might be time for one question after each presentation, but there will be definitely time for some Q&A at the end of this webinar. Don't forget the survey, that's important. There's a link here at the bottom. You will also get a reminder per email. We need your feedback. We need your feedback so we can offer these kind of workshops again in the future. And I would very much appreciate your participation. All right, let's dive right in. So whenever I visit an urban wood company and I talk to the business owner, I ask them the same question, and that is, what do you think about the idea that there's some free wood, you put it in a saw, you cut it into slabs, you dry them, and then you sell them and make a fortune? Well, the first part of the response is always the same. They laugh at me and they disagree. And then the second part is the story about how they got into urban wood, how they became who they are, what they did in an earlier life, and what they did to become a successful owner of an urban wood business. And to capture this information a little more systematically, my student and I, we conducted an urban wood business survey. We got 24 participants from 14 states across the United States. And I want to thank those participants at this point very much. And well, let's take a look at some of the results. What's really interesting about urban wood is you can't really study urban wood. And if you talk to owners, they all have a different background. In our survey, about a third of participants had no wood background at all. Some of them in an earlier life were farmers, consultants, industry managers, scientists. Yeah, some were wood craftsmen, yes, hobbyists, and maybe there might even be a pilot out there, a former pilot who's now proudly running a successful urban wood business. But what they all have in common is they are autodidacts with the ability to solve problems and learn new things. Not all urban wood businesses were started full-time. If you look at our survey results, most of them were started part-time. Some of them maybe on a weekend as a hobby, others as a new activity or a side gig for an existing business. And so you want to start a business. Well, what about the challenges? What was the hardest challenge in the early stages? Market access on continuity of sales, generating enough or making enough products, finding enough clients or people that want to buy your products, and connecting the two seems to be the hardest challenge. And all of that under the aspect of generating a reliable income that you can trust and that you can live off and grow your business off. Then there's machine operation and maintenance. Well, how do you use a saw? How do you cut wood? And then how do you maintain all of the equipment? I don't think you have the time and the money to call a service agent or every time that something is wrong. So you have to figure that out. And then logistics and material handling. Wood is heavy. The logs are heavy, so you have to get them to your site. And then when you have made slabs and lumber, you also have to get them to other locations for drying and eventually for sales. So you have to figure all of that out. Point 5 here is interesting, funding and finances. I mean, it's clear, you need money to buy equipment. But what about knowing how to manage the finances of a business? You have to learn that as well. Biggest expenses when you started? Well, you need something, you need a foundation. And the fundamental equipment here, the foundation of your business, are a sawmill and a skid steer. I think that's pretty clear. What was interesting though is we allowed participants to provide some open comments. One of them was that sawmill services can get your initial cash flow going, but lumber is more profitable. And that's a good aspect. You don't have to take your wood all the way down to the wood shop and making furniture. If you can provide sawmill services, that's a really good start. And some people have a business that provide just these services. I think we will hear something about that a little later. If you look to the right, importance of equipment and capability. So hauling logs, the log yard or some place to store your logs, and the sawmill. That's really the essential. These are the essential components deemed crucial and very important. And then everything else down the chain of processing becomes a little less important because not everybody takes the product down to the level of furniture. At the far right, you see website. Keep that in mind for a few slides. That's a very important aspect of urban wood businesses. One thing I skipped though, and I want to get back to that here right now, is on the left, people. Biggest expenses when you started, people. From my experience talking to business owners, a big challenge is converting from running the business by yourself to hiring someone who becomes a reliable resource to your operation. I mentioned this earlier. Free wood, where do you get your wood from? Do you pay for it? Well, the most common sources for urban wood seem to be arborists, private landowners, and city governments and municipalities. Urban wood companies often or typically rely on multiple sources to have a reliable supply. But the thing with the free wood, people didn't really agree with that. So 6 out of our 24 participants said, yes, we pay for the wood. And 8 of them, so that's a total of 14, said, yes, sometimes. The background is that, and these are comments from our participants, nothing with value is free. The arborist, the landowner, the municipalities, they know about the value of that log, especially if it's a specific species, it grew in a certain way, or maybe it has that really fantastic story that you can sell with your final product. All of this has value, and there's always money involved. And only because you can pick up the wood for free doesn't mean it costs you anything. There's cost for transportation, you will have some kind of overhead, so it's not really free. What are your products and your biggest market? Well, lumber, mantles, and slabs. All of these products, well, they look simple, but even though there's some finesse with them. So I don't want to just say it's the most simple product. There's a finesse with them and challenges, but these are the basic products. And then if you look at the other ones, flooring, desks, doors, and then furniture, different types of furniture, these are specialties. Urban wood companies often specialize in certain products to cover a diverse range of products. Well, that gives them a reliable income. Maybe one of their products becomes less popular, so that ensures a continuous income. And it makes you stand out from other companies. If you're a specialist for doors, well, you might have a good niche there, which is a good market opportunity, and it generates income. Most important markets, well, custom furniture, portable sawmill service. Yeah, we heard that a lot in our survey. So that's important. commercial, institutional, and retail. So all these breweries and restaurants, the hospitality industry, that's a huge market for urban wood product, especially anything with a live edge, has a real strong market there. Very important, how do you reach customers? Urban wood companies are typically very well embedded and connected in the local community. And word of mouth is really important. I know some companies that do nothing but marketing by word of mouth. However, and that's why I mentioned website a little earlier and told you to keep that in mind. Urban wood is the best example for using the internet, websites and social media for excellent marketing and to an advantage. If you look on websites and social media, they're just perfect photos and images of products, of knife edge furniture, of activities, of showing how the log is cut into slabs. And I think urban wood has really mastered these opportunities, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And frankly, this is my generation. I'm close to 40. We work with social media, and that's how we recognize companies in our region and become aware of what they do. When did you start making money? Well, if you start an urban wood business, that's an important question. There is no one answer. The age of businesses in our survey were between 1 year and 30 years. And of course, those at around 10 to 30 years, they were making money. But what does it really mean to make a profit? The thing with urban wood is there's a long time where you have to reinvest all the money to make. You will, because you want to solve bottlenecks, you want to increase capacities, you have to improve your operation. So I think it takes a long time until there's the first dollar bill that you take home and that you won't spend on anything associated with your business. All profits are reinvested. That's a very typical scenario. Last but not least, any advice for new urban wood businesses? Yeah, we got a lot. Every participant left a really nice comment there. Honest feedback. And some of them are here. Networking, keep overhead low, know what your customer wants. And that's the bitter reality. If you're not ready to work hard, this is not your business. Keep it as a hobby. However, don't give up. Think outside the box. You have to become the jack of all trades here. And that's, I think, part of this story of success. And then sell the story. I think urban wood is really good at selling how you succeeded, how you failed and did things better, how you grew, and all of the things that happened or that had to happen until you were able to produce this fine slab or fine piece of furniture. The results of our survey and other things we found in the literature will be published in an extension publication. It's currently under review, and I expect it to be out there very, very soon. Whenever you have questions outside of this webinar, you can find me at NC State. My contact information is right here. And well, in German, we say, Holz ist wunderbar. So thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, that's it.
All right, great. Now we will hand it off. I don't see any questions that have come in, so we'll go ahead and hand it off to the next speaker, which is Cambium Carbon. So that's going to be Ben. So Ben, I'm going to make you a speaker or a presenter, and you can take over from there. You are muted, Ben, sir.
Do you have me now?
Yes, you're good to go. If you wanted to share a screen or a picture of anything like that, you can go ahead and do that too.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. I'm just getting my screen pulled up here. Great. So I just wanted to talk really briefly about who we are at Cambium Carbon, and then I'm happy to field questions overall. So the first thing I wanted to share was we are a company that is really intended to help serve, the urban wood space. And you can really think about us as a connector between national scale and local work. And so what we do is really three different things, and we're happy to talk about a few different parts of that. The first part that we really work on is we help work with local millers. We help connect wood online through a product called Trace, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. We also really help national brands come in and access local wood products and do that at scale. And that's something that Frederick was highlighting, is that type of stable recurring revenue that you get from a larger buyer is something that we're really trying to bring and give access to for local millers, sawyers, and makers. And then the last thing that we do is we really work with a lot of different cities, focused on how do we create the enabling conditions, to really see that scale and to help, the urban wood movement continue to grow and help open and unlock doors for local millers to access and work in bigger and bigger ways with cities and their communities. So, there's a few different things that we work with in each of those. Again, the first one is Trace. So Trace is a really amazing, product that we've been working on for a long time. We have about 75 different urban millers, wood product shops that are on board right now. And what Trace really allows you to do is manage your inventory, get it online really, really easily. And the big parts of that are knowing where it is, being able to put it online quickly through an easy integration, getting slabs or dimensional lumber on your online store. It also allows you to integrate really easily with Stripe and Square. So you're in store purchasing and directly with your Square retail app so that you can manage that wood. And one of the big things that we've seen with a number of our different shops is that knowing where your wood is, being able to, easily manage that inventory can really help, ramp up sales. And then obviously, as Frederick was also highlighted, a website, most folks in that study, highlighted it as really critical. That's definitely something that we see, and having that integration to be able to show off your wood can really expand your market reach and do a lot of different pieces. The other piece on that is, we're really working to grow and scale it. There's a number of new product features that are continuing to grow, particularly around chain of custody, being able to do that. Lots of folks in the space have worked on that for a long time. That's something that we're working on as well. And, if anybody's interested, wants to learn more, you can go to trace.com, TRAECE, and sign up. It's free to sign up to check out a demo. Feel free to set it up, play around with it. There's lots of great resources there. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me as well. I'm happy to walk folks through that. So that's one part of it, is really helping working with local millers and makers to get online. The second piece of that is working with these larger national brands and helping them connect into more urban wood. So we're working with a number of larger companies, and what we're really trying to bring in is larger long-term demand. Because as everybody knows, working with urban wood, it's complicated, timelines can be really challenging, and knowing what demand is a year from now is really, really different than trying to sell something 30 days out. And so particularly when we think about bigger orders and we think more about dimensional lumber, which is where we really see the movement going in lots of ways, that's what we want to be really bringing in. And so we were working with a number of large brands on purchases that are really large and recurring and long-term. And then we work with local millers who are, within our platform to be able to fulfill those orders and, to really grow and scale there. So that's something that we really see as a critical part of, growing and scaling wood utilization, is being able to have the right type of demand matched with the right type of production. And then the final thing that we are really working on and trying to drive at scale is work within cities. And so what we do is, we work with a number of different cities through different grants, the Forest Service, a number of different organizations, and we're trying to help create, the enabling conditions to actually access urban wood at scale and reuse it. As many folks know from working within local communities or from seeing other work out there, there's a lot of challenges within the cities. We're particularly excited about a project that we're launching in Philadelphia right now, where the city is basically giving space. They're really bringing in all of their municipal logs And we're working with a local workforce development nonprofit to set up a mill shop as well as other local shops in the area to think about secondary processing, drying, some of the other fabrication components, and then we're helping to connect that wood into the market. And so that's a really great opportunity to create that circular economy and some of those bigger pieces. So that sort of lays out what we do, what we're going after. Just really briefly, a little bit more on Cambium Carbon and our team. We also have a full fabrication, urban wood shop that we've had for the last year. We partnered with. They're amazing. They've been working within the urban wood space for about 15 years, so have a ton of experience in the space on our team, and we're continuing to see that really provide a lot of value and growth. And then the last thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly, and then happy to field questions or touch on anything else, is when we think about the space and what we really want to develop, one is continuing to provide that climate impact-centric branding. So we're growing and scaling Carbon Smart Wood, which is fully tracked chain of custody and also includes direct reinvestment in local trees. And so having that branding, being able to put that on products, we think is something that is going to help the industry really continue to scale. And the second is, really seeing and scaling, local businesses. Obviously, everybody comes at this from a different perspective, from a different time. Frederick was highlighting this as well. Some of it's hobbyists, some of it's, super serious. Some of these are legacy businesses that have been around for a really long time and have built out a full circular economy model. We are certainly not the first in that. Our goal is to really help connect, again, local to national, and really are here to serve local millers and makers and trying to connect those dots and grow this movement overall. And the last thing that I think that I always want to highlight and want to push on is I really feel like in a lot of ways, this space has operated from one of scarcity. We have looked at this problem, and a lot of different folks have built it in a way that has been amazing. And also there's so many opportunities for growth here. And what we want to really help enable is collective effort, collaborative. That's why, Trace is free to get on board. We want to help, really create a position of scarcity. We want to create move away from the position of scarcity and move to one of abundance within urban wood. And I think that's something that we're going after in a really big way. So if anybody's interested in learning more about Trace, trace.com. Feel free to check that out. It's super easy to get on board, and it's really easy to plug in. If you're interested in learning more about the other parts of our work, how we could support within city work, whether you're a miller or a city yourself, and you want to utilize more wood or connect into municipal government, we can help there as well. Or if you're interested in learning more about the large national orders that we have and seeing how you could become a fulfillment partner for those, please let me know as well. My email is ben@cambiumcarbon.com, so don't hesitate to reach out. I'll pause there.
All right, great. Thanks, Ben. We did have one question that came in during your talk. It's asked, does ash as a victim of ash borer have value?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm sure Damon can speak to this as well. We see ash utilized for a number of different things. We actually just launched a line of ash that has, emerald ash borer holes with a furniture company in New York City. And again, one of the biggest things that I think we need to create as a movement, right, is to shift this narrative between, something that is like we're trying to insert urban wood into traditional, lumber products or traditional forestry, to one where we are really creating something new, and that actually emerald ash borer holes should be celebrated. It should be exciting. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with how Patagonia has done this with their worn wear. So reused clothes, clothes that have tears or stitching or, imperfections. I might call them high character clothes. They've done a great job of branding that as scars tell a story, right? Like they've told that message and they've really built that. And now that's something that's really desirable. The same thing is true with what we are doing and can do with urban wood, and emerald ash borer is a great example of that. We're doing a lot of work in Minnesota right now with a number of different communities that are seeing massive ash removals, and there's no reason we can't utilize that if we are able to process it correctly, if we have the right partners to make sure that we have real quality as we move through that, and also if we can move the needle on preferences, right? If we can help people understand what is it, why why do they want to use it, and you know, why is it actually exciting and really cool to be able to use you know, EAB. So that's my initial reaction. I'm sure some other folks can speak more to that as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. I don't have any other questions that came in at this time, so we'll move on to the next speaker, which is going to be Henko from Nile Dry Kiln. And so, Henko, I will hand things over to you right quick. And you should be able to share your presentation. Oh, you're muted. I think I don't hear your microphone.
You hear me now?
Yes, there you go. I got you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, you're good to go. Oh, you're in the notes view. I switch your display up again.
Display settings, swap it. Just start at the beginning, that helps. Good morning, everybody. I'm from Nile Dry Kilns. I've been in the States for almost 4 years. I'm from the southern part of Africa. I'm the drying specialist at Nile Dry Kilns. Sorry, let me just figure out my navigation here quickly, how that works. So just a quick background on Nile. Nile's been around for many years. We're located up in Brewer in Maine. We manufacture a whole bunch of kilns from very small to quite large, from roughly a 300 board foot kiln up to 250,000 board feet. We've catered mostly for hardwoods, but also lately softwoods, as we've been able to increase the temperature ranges that the dehumidification kilns can run at. Nile's claim to fame is the dehumidification kilns. That does not mean that we don't know or do not sell a quality product in terms of conventional or bigger size kilns. Jeremy Howe is our president. He was supposed to present today. He couldn't make it, so it was passed over to me. My background is basically with technology and automation in the timber industry. I've been doing it for many years, and now kindly invited me to join the company, so I'm here. Today I'll be speaking partly with my Nile hat on, but being seeing as the topic is urban wood, I can tell you a bit about my urban wood background back in Africa. I've personally built 3 small kilns in the 3,000 to 5,000 board foot range, and I've been running it for many years. I actually just sold the last of my kilns back there just a few months ago. So I've got good experience running small scale kilns as well. So the topics for today is basically why we dry wood, how to get started and what you need to know, a little bit of risk versus reward, and then obviously how to become a pro in what we as timber dryers or professional timber dryers try to achieve. So obviously when you dry timber, it lasts longer. Apart from what I've written there on the screen, there's also obviously dimensional stability. Drying the timber prevents it from moving or shrinking once it's installed, prevents it from cracking and splitting. Partly after it's been installed, the strength and the stiffness of it improves. Drywood is less liable to fungal attack, and even some beetles don't like to snack on drywood. Drywood has better nailing and screwing capabilities. Also, gluing properties are improved, and of course, it increases the electrical resistance as well as the thermal heat value. And the second last thing is obviously light to transport, so your transportation costs goes down substantially when you sell dried wood versus wet wood. Fundamentally, we dry it because it increases the value of timber. how to get started and what you need. Niall has a very small, quick reference manual book that we've actually printed and have been handing out at some trade shows. If you guys click on this little, what do you call this thing? Thingy-majig here, it will actually open that little manual. It's quite a nice little read. Probably won't take you more than a few minutes, but it'll give you the basics, the fundamentals of drying wood. How to get started? You obviously need a controlled environment to dry wood. This requires temperature or energy to get the moisture out of the wood. You need the humidity to prevent the wood from drying out too fast. And obviously you need airflow that is the transporter of energy to the timber, and also the transporter to take the moisture away from the surface of the timber. All of this must be in balance. You cannot dry timber properly if you have too little airflow or too little energy. Your vents are too big. There's certain ratios when drying timber that needs to be adhered to. A lot of this information is available online. There's one big reference that is almost basically the Bible of drying wood, is the Dry Kiln Operator's Manual. There's a lot of very, very valuable information in there. It gives you some ratios of exact energy requirements per board feet you need. If you're drying hardwoods, what air speeds you require, what is the ratio of volume of wood versus venting capacity that you require, all of that stuff. Yeah, let me see next one. Risk versus reward. Frederick spoke a lot about this. I think he covered quite a few of these points. I think in the end, it's about the move from hobby to the economics of scale. From the slides that he showed us, it's obvious and it's very interesting that you know, there is money to be made, but a lot of people do it for the fun of it and for the relaxing of it. And you know, it doesn't mean you're going to make a lot of money out of it. In my case, I had a small little wood miser saw, and the timber that I was milling at the time was not very high value, so it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So I just reverted back to just drying timber on a contract basis for guys. It was just a side income for me. It was a lot of fun. I had so much fun. I learned so much from setting up those little kilns and doing the programming and the automation part of it, and basically testing all the technology that we pushed out into the field on these small little kilns first. Your biggest cost, obviously, is your initial investment, and your other big cost is obviously your running cost or your energy cost. These are all determining factors when you decide on which kiln, or if you're going to put up a kiln. Sorry, let me just kill this. Somebody's trying to call me. Apologies. The running cost is obviously one of your biggest costs. And another thing that you must keep in mind when you decide on which kiln or size kiln that you want to do is will you ever be in a position that you want to sell this thing? And I'm specifically putting this in from my experience. I've built a few kilns out of boards and plywood and insulation. And you know, it's a fixture. It stays where you build it. It's not going anywhere. And when I decided to pull out of that, I had basically no capital that I could, or no capital investment that was sellable. So if you're gonna do a kiln, decide whether, or keep in mind that maybe one day you'll want to sell this thing, and your options there would be to either build something like I did, go for something that is modular and movable, like a container or a type of kiln that you can load on the back of a truck, and there it goes. My philosophy always, and I've told many people this, especially when it comes to drying technologies, is buy once, cry once. Look at what's available. Look at the value that you'll be adding. Obviously, all these costs and stuff comes into play, but don't short buy yourself. There's a lot of I'm on a few forums on the internet, on Facebook as well, and you often see guys asking, what fans can I use? And somebody comes up and they say, oh, you can buy this and this off Amazon. You see these things and you immediately think, you know, this guy is buying the wrong thing. He's buying something that is now cheap, but it may only last 6 months or 3 months. And eventually he ends up buying the more expensive thing that he should have bought in the first place anyway. Risk versus reward. There's also a few things that you need to keep in mind when drying. Obviously, the rate at which timber can dry. You think of a 1-inch board versus a 4-inch slab, whether it's softwood or hardwood. Generally, as a rule of thumb, or in my experience, if you go from a 1-inch or a 4/4 piece of softwood and you double up that in size, your drying rate is more or less doubled, and sometimes it's just slightly less than double. When you do it in hardwood, it's more closer to multiplied by 2.5 times. So if you were drying 10 days on a 1-inch piece, you're probably going to dry closer to 25 days on a 2-inch piece. Also very important, what moisture content you started, what's the moisture rate that you can remove at. What's the cost of your energy? I already touched a little bit on this. What would it cost to run it? We put an example of saying a small DH kiln will use an average 12 kilowatt hours a day. Yes and no. Maybe the first 24 hours it will take 120 kilowatt hours, depending on what species of timber you're drying. It may not be a 30-day process. It may be an 8-day process. So the shorter that time is, obviously the higher the average electricity usage will be. If you were going to dry timber for other people, people bring you funny sizes, even though your kiln may be sized for 2,000 board feet and you want to charge per board feet or per load. You get a phone call of a guy that wants to know how much are you going to charge him, and you give him a price per board foot. And when he arrives, he's got 7 different lengths, 3 different thicknesses. Some of it has been lying in the field and air dried for 7 months, and other stuff is 3 weeks old. Your 2,000 board feet kiln all of a sudden only take 1,200 board feet. It still takes you more or less the same time to dry, to get everything to the same moisture content, but you don't have that full capacity of 2,000. You may only have 1,200 board feet in there. It throws out your calculation substantially. I've seen some guys cutting boards out of huge branches. You sit with reaction wood and that stuff twists and turns and goes crazy once it's in the kiln, just because of cross grain and funny shapes in the timber. So it's all small things that you need to keep in mind. Becoming a pro, there's also the different drying technologies that you need to be looking at. And it also depends greatly on whether you're going to be a hobbyist or you're going to do it for other people. It's important that you do your homework, A lot of the technologies are very expensive to buy initially, but it may be a lot cheaper option to run in the long run. Yeah, that's basically it. Any questions on the types of rye? No questions so far?
I'm not seeing any questions come through.
Lastly, about becoming a pro, you know, it takes time. I read an article once. To become a professional or proficient in any type of thing, you need to spend thousands of hours doing it and studying it. If you really become good, you will be used for your drying knowledge and your drying operation. To do it properly, you need the right equipment, you need the right controls, proper record keeping. Yeah. In the long run, you're in it for the long haul. Like I said earlier, buy once, cry once. Get the right equipment, get it done. Thank you. I think that's me for now. Anything else? Any questions?
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing any questions come through at this time. So just to keep us on time, thank you, Henko. We'll move on to the next speaker, which is Randall. I will make you present now, and you can share your screen. And I see your screen, but you are muted, Randall. So if you want to unmute real quick.
And that.
There we
and
go.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me get this out of the way real quick and slideshow. Okay. Can you see me and my screen right now?
Yes, you are good to go.
Okay, great. My name's Randall Williams. I run Fireside Farm and Sawmill. It's a farm right outside of Chapel Hill and Durham. And yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about. There we go. Talk a little bit about running a portable sawmill business. So the farm itself, I serve a 25-mile radius around our farm. I've been running Wood-Mizer LT40 for about 10 years. I started for 5 years as a hobbyist miller, kind of a homesteader, and then I've been full-time for the last 5. Before that, I was a literature teacher. And my sawmill operation now includes 2 LT40s, a Lucas mill, a Niles kiln, 2 loaders, 2 full-time sawyers, so I'm one of them, a part-time helper. Initially, I was building live edge tables and bar tops as a part of the business, and next year I'm adding an LT50 and a new shop to the operation. I wanted to point out that my operation is bootstrap funded, so it's been a learning process on what to invest in and what not to. The first thing, let's see. Okay, I figured that I would talk about two different things today. One is for the folks who are in different industries like nonprofits and businesses. What are the things that I think that we can do in NC to foster and help the local wood-based industry? And then also I imagine that there are a lot of people out there wondering if becoming a sawyer is a good thing, is a right fit for you. So I wanted to address those two parts of the question. I thought that, Fred mentioned this earlier, that that there are lots of different scales, and so I wanted to talk about 3 different business scales. One we might imagine is the side hustle. This is like the weekend sawyer, the homesteader, the farmer, the woodworker, someone who's milling for friends and neighbors. This could be a push mill or a hydraulic mill. This is somebody who has a full-time job and income in another way. And then another scale that we can talk about is somebody who decides to take that full-time, and maybe they buy a hydraulic mill, they're thinking about lumber sales, they really want to make this their career. And then the third scale, and this is kind of the scale that I'm at right now, which is I mill full-time, year-round, have employees, Most of my work is portable. There might be some lumber sales in there, and there's a kiln. And so I'll talk about the different opportunities and challenges of these three. The side hustle, this is kind of where I started while I was teaching. I was also running the mill on the weekends. And I really liked this scale because, you know, as they say, it's living the wood life. You know, if you have a desk job during the week and on the weekend, you get to make some sawdust and connect with your neighbors and you know, cut some really beautiful slabs. That's really pleasurable. It also can supplement your income. You know, you see sawyers like this charging $65 to $100 an hourly rate, which can really help, you know, take care of some grocery bills. Also, if you're building a farm or a homestead, you can save a lot of money by milling your own lumber. Chicken coops, goat sheds, barns, these kind of things, tables. And then also just the way that it puts you into the community, I think can build relationships and friendships in the industry and among local folks. The challenges with this scale, and I want to mention, I'll come back to this point a bunch, is your side hustle legal? So you buy a sawmill, you pull it in the backyard, you start milling, and ostensibly you can do that as a hobbyist for yourself and your own lumber. But the question is, when you start to mill for other people, where does that put you categorically as a business? Because you're running a business out of your home. And there are a lot of zoning regs right now that are outdated that suggest that the sawmill is actually a commercial or industrial process, and therefore is outlawed in even rural buffer or agricultural residential areas. And so you want to make sure that you're aware of zoning. And for this, it's also really important to be in close kind of good relations with your neighbors. The second question is, how are you going to move those logs when you get them? You got a skid steer, tractor, you're going to use cant hooks. The third thing is you're going to be producing, you know, my LT40 is producing between 250 and 500 board feet an hour. And so if you're generating that much lumber, where are you going to put it on your property? All of a sudden you could just start to have giant piles everywhere, and you're chasing around 10 as it blows off during windstorms because you're not, you can't anticipate just how much lumber you've got. Also, when you're doing the side hustle, what is a fair price to you that actually accounts for your costs, which are your blades and your, you know, your tractor maintenance and things like that. And the next point I want to point out is that a lot of times people get into this and they're thinking that they can take one oak log and turn it into 7 slabs, put it up on Facebook Marketplace and sell it for $750 to $1050 a board foot green. And I think that really sinks the whole ship of the urban wood movement when people sell green lumber to unsuspecting buyers who then put it into their houses, and then it warps, and then they think all live edge slabs warp. And so these side hustle folks need to be aware that you can't just ethically sell wood that is dry to the touch but green inside, because it's kind of ruining the practice for all of us. Then also think about, like, you know, if you have an LT15 and you take a sawmill job and it's, you know, 15 oaks, that's going to take you many weekends of work. So you want to make sure that you scale your operation to the machines that you have. And then also remember that there's not like a sawmill mechanic right around the corner from you who is going to be able to help you when your cuts are all wonky. So you need to be mechanically inclined if you're going to do a side hustle. When you start to scale up, there are great opportunities to go full time. You can help your neighbors and your friends build out farms that they otherwise wouldn't have. The return on investment from turning logs to lumber is super high. And so you can generate, you know, I think I can save people 2/3 of the cost of a building or a barn by using their own lumber. It puts building a farm within reach for a lot of folks. The second is that you're really developing a specialized skill that, in my opinion, is recession-proof and also adaptable for the climate crisis that we're in. And then the third, it is possible that you get a higher cash flow than a kind of a service job or a teaching job and things like that. But I just wanted to caution folks that, you know, a high cash flow does not mean that you get a high income. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. The challenges of running that small business, now your zoning issue is existential. You're starting to make big investments, building out your infrastructure, and it's not just your local neighbor who loves you and brings you casseroles. Suddenly all landowners around you have a stake in what you're doing. And so if a developer buys a parcel across from you and puts up a bunch of houses, calls the zoning official, and suddenly you're shut down and you just invested all this money. Second, if you're really going to be strategic about starting a business, you got to understand who's out there already. If you have 3 third-generation sawyers who are running portable sawmills, there's really not much of a market niche for you, and so you're going to be struggling. And then also, I think that the urban wood movement really appeals to people who value sustainability. And so these are the kind of folks around Chapel Hill and Durham, for example, who are willing to pay a little extra to get the wood from their land as opposed to buying it from Lowe's or Home Depot. The third, and I can't emphasize this enough, if you're going to run a portable sawmill business, you have to have a plan for the heat. You can't just shut down for 3 months out of the year when it's over 90 degrees. And the heat is grueling. I've been outside working in the heat every day this summer. The humidity is brutal. And it's life-threatening unless you have a plan, which would include lots of water, umbrellas, working in shade, adjusting your hours. I mean, there's so many ways that your heat is an adversary, a real adversary, and that's not what people think about when they're dreaming of milling their own lumber. Once you start to get into your small business scale, you got to have a pricing structure that includes all the additional costs of being an LLC. If you're going to be hauling logs, you have to pay tag and title fees for hauling 26K. You start to accumulate equipment, and now your rate has to accommodate for that. And so if you go to my website, firesidesawmill.com/portable sawmill, my rates are all there. It's 150 setup, 105 an hour, 25 per blade. And then it's a transparent, clear formula that people can see before they even call me. And also, I wanted just to emphasize that, being a portable sawyer, being a small business person, you're taking a lot of risks with investment, and it's physically grueling work too. And so, is your relationship strong enough to weather these kind of investments? What happens when you're super frustrated because you're booked out 8 weeks and your sawmill goes down and the alternator that you need is not available for 2 weeks? How do you plan your home life to withstand the stressors of being, a portable sawyer? Do you have the proper log moving equipment? Because people call you when they have a 40-inch diameter white oak log in their backyard through a 4-foot gate. How are you going to move that? And so when you start to get into it, the sawmill purchase, and this was in Frederick's presentation, the sawmill purchase is very small compared to all the equipment that you need. So you can start to accumulate at least 100K worth of equipment very quickly just to be able to accommodate the demands that you get. Also, there's the question of when somebody calls and say, will you come over to my house and let me know how much this will cost? And you spend a bunch of time writing out an estimate, and then they decide, no, that's not worth it. You can sink a half a day doing an estimate that never really comes to fruition. So how do you deal with that? And now, because you're running your whole life around this thing, how are you going to do maintenance on the equipment? Because you're talking about specialized equipment here, right? A Bobcat mechanic can come out for $300 an hour, but suddenly that sinks the whole budget for your week. So, and then once you start to get all these calls, you got to figure out how to streamline a way to get people on your books. So medium size is kind of where I am right now. The opportunities are that I feel really grateful that I'm able to provide meaningful employment for some folks. I feel like I'm a part of something bigger than myself, which I think is really the key to happiness in life, is that I'm in service to changing people's relationship with nature and diverting, and I'm a part of an interesting question, which is how do you divert logs from the waste stream to build out affordable housing for more people, in a time of climate crisis and climate refugees. This is an interesting problem and worth my time. And then the other advantage, I think, is that it's nice to be able to build out the infrastructure, or at least the farm, with the money that's coming in from the portable mill. The challenges of the medium size is that your uptime becomes your priority. You got to stay working. As soon as the sawmill goes down, how fast can you fix it and get back up? Because if you're booked out 12 weeks, like, you have to keep on schedule. Then the question is, like, you know, if you're milling all day long and you get 4 calls and 3 emails, how do you both do that administrative stuff, answer everyone's questions, and while also milling? So it quickly balloons into a very big operation. And then how do you add equipment that enables you to roll up to a job site and saw any log anywhere, anytime, if the client is willing to pay for it? So with that, I added the Lucas mill, which is portable and can handle those larger diameter logs, 36 to 72 inches in diameter. The other challenges with a medium-sized business, your pricing structure is existential. Like, you have to bid projects right. You have to be able to estimate how long stuff is going to take, you know, down to the minute and within $100 of accuracy, sometimes sight unseen. Then, you know, having employees is its own challenge. How do you train them? Because there's no Sawyer school. And on the back end, how do you pay them? Are they W-9? Are they 1099 employees? How do you like, you know, keep them so that they're feeling like they're growing? And then, you know, you're starting to build a reputation as a business. So how do you maintain the highest quality lumber as possible? Like, if you mill a bunch of pine and it suddenly blues up and you can't sell it, you know, like, you got to eat that. So how do you provide builders and woodworkers with the best quality stuff that you can find? And it's at this scale that the website and social media becomes crucial in telling your story. And I guess the last part on the medium-sized is that within the problem of the urban wood movement, you'll find a niche rather than servicing the general population. You can kind of find your sweet spot. And this is where I think coming in as a community is really key, where you're not in competition with other local sawyers, but you understand their capacity, and you're basically sharing the load with all of your friends who are sawyers and kiln dryers and arborists and excavators. And so I feel really fortunate to be in the Durham-Chapel Hill area where I think we have that kind of community. I'll skip the last part. So what are the 5 takeaways with the 3 different scales? One is understand your capacity. Don't take on too much. This is related to master one thing really well and do that. And once you start to get that under control, then flirt with doing something else. So if you're going to do live edge tables, just do that, but don't do live edge tables, kiln drying, portable arborist work, you know, bar tops, because you'll get overwhelmed really fast. And each of those is a really specialized skill. 3, create a price structure no matter what you're doing that's fair to you and actually pays off your expenses. And the other part about that I think is unique to the wood business is don't professionalize a passion just because you value it. You know, sometimes keeping it at a hobby scale is actually more rewarding for you in the long run. And remember that zoning and heat and the physical demands of this work never go away. So you are in relationship with that for the entire time you have your business. So local folks, industry folks, how can you help us? Number one, if you are a part of an institution or a university and you want to help build out this movement, there's a bill that we got passed through the House unanimously 2 years ago, HB 141, the Promote NC Sawmills Act. This will train local sawyers to certify their lumber for grade stamp approved construction, and this would be a sea change for the local industry because suddenly home builders would be able to buy local wood from local sawyers. Number 2, we have to, as a state, address some of these zoning issues that are preventing small businesses from running. And so how do you draft local legislation, model legislation for county commissioners to approve small scale sawmills in their localities? And 3, you know, I mean, as we watch hurricanes roll through, let's as an industry have a plan for diverting the logs from the waste stream and figuring out a way to monetize that for our local communities rather than taking them and you know, putting them into the dump. Happy to answer any questions. that you have, there's my website, firesidesawmill.com. I'm on Instagram, Fireside Sawmill, and that's my 15 minutes.
All right, great. Thanks, Randall. We'll just roll right on into the next and last presenter, and then we have a Q&A session at the end of that. So thank you, Randall. We're going to switch over to Damon. I'm going to make you presenter, and you can share your screen and everything from there. And you are muted, Damon.
Super. Can you hear me?
There you go. Yep, we see you and we hear you.
Super. Do you see me and my screen or just
Yes.
my screen? Okay,
Both.
super. Randall, wow, that was great. I'm so glad I was able to listen to you. That was a synopsis of my life also. That was wonderful to hear it from someone else's mouth. Well articulated. The whole day has been great. I'm going to try not to repeat anything Randall or the gentleman from Niles said, both of which had a lot of great information. I will skew my own direction here. I started a sawmilling business with the intention of being where I am today. So it was a plan. And I think if I were to give someone advice in this space, I would say make a plan and stick to it hard and fast, and know that there are pivot points you have to make changes, but identify the plan, put it on paper, and figure out what it is you want to do. I would suggest to everyone who has never owned a small business to read a book called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneur's Myth. Wonderful book. It's very small, but very valuable. I reference it all the time. A few more things. I would also suggest don't chase shiny balls, and that means, I think Randall even said something about this, was figure out what you're going to do it well, hone your skills, become an expert, and don't do the thing someone else is doing just because someone asks you if you can do it. So don't experiment on the fly. It's not good for your bottom line. When it comes to, like, when I started a business, I had a 20-year career in the wood industry. I knew wood, I knew lumber grading, I knew veneer grading, I knew lots of things about wood, but I didn't know how to run a small sawmill with an engine, and I didn't know how to dry wood. So I read prolifically. I read a lot of books, a lot of white paper, a lot of things from universities. NC State, I leaned on a lot. And when I started, I bought a sawmill and I started to build a dry kiln, a DH kiln. I used Niles prepackaged products. It took me a while. I used a shipping container with insulation. So it's stainless steel lined, insulated shipping container. It's called a reefer. And that was my quick point of access to building a dry kiln. Luckily enough, I think I got just dumb lucky, but the couple professors from state came out, NC State came out and measured my airflows, and the thing was just perfect. And again, I just dumb luck. But to the gentleman from Niles' point about trying to build a makeshift thing, we have a design where we're running 6 Nile fans in our chamber, and they've been running 24 hours a day for 9 years. So 9 years, they run almost 24 hours a day, and I've never had an issue. So yeah, buy it once is great advice there. There is something too about starting a business, and again, this is only hindsight. Differentiating income and profit. If you don't understand what that means, reading Small Business for Dummies shouldn't be beneath you. Starting a small business, having income is different than money coming in for an hourly rate that you're charging. Of course, when I started my business, I planned on it. I saved my money for years. I had the lifestyle where I had savings, and my wife and I planned for me not to have income for 3+ years. Literally, I didn't have income for 3+ years, even though I was doing $300,000 a month in revenue from my business. I didn't have enough for income. There was that much reinvestment, and there was always the next thing I needed. Currently, we have a wood shop where we build super high-end custom furniture. We contract this log on my screen here is the largest known poplar log in our city of Charlotte. We make pieces of furniture that are really weird and special for people, but we've gotten known for it. Speaking of ash, there's an ash desk, all sorts of different ways to use this wood. We have a firewood company. We know how to do really special finishes. That was my background for quite a long time. And we have a chain of custody where we know where every tree grew and who touched it and why it came down. Now, all these things I intentionally started before I started my business. This was my plan. So I haven't deviated from my plan, although the first 3 weeks of my business, I got an order for some green pallet wood that I could cut on my sawmill to produce some revenue that could help me cash flow the payment on my sawmill. And I've told this story before. I worked for about an hour and a half sawing some logs so I could sell it to a pallet company, which their market price was their market price. That's what they were paying. And I learned about in an hour and a half that I couldn't reach my goals even going down that road. So I stopped. I called the company back and said, thanks for the order. I can't fulfill it. I'm in the middle of Charlotte. I have a huge insurance policy. I have employees. I've never had a 1099. I've paid income tax and employment tax from day one. I have machine payments with insurances. Vehicles with tags. We have 6 trailers, 5 trucks, 2 wheel loaders, 2 skid steers, 5 sawmills, 4 locations, DH kilns, vacuum kilns. I think our monthly wage cost of wages right now to our employees only is in the $60,000 range. Our employees have health care, our employees have 401k. So that's where we are now, 10 years in, and we're in a spot that I like. We have a lot of purpose and a meaning, upcycling all these local logs. So with all that said, we do have great partnerships, not only with our city, city leaders, foresters, arborists, city planners. We just started a nursery. So the point of the nursery is to create a company that starts trees that one day will be for sale to landscapers, arborists, homeowners, whomever. And those trees are the same species of trees that the arborist community, the urban arborist community wants to see in the ground, which are beneficial for the canopy. So some of our intention there is plant a tree with the living usefulness for those folks and for the reason of canopy health, but to parlay or run parallel to that species that the industry can use once those trees are dead. Currently in our city, like many cities in the Southeast, I don't know the rest of the country, many cities in the Southeast, we have an overpopulation of trees that we as urban millers or anybody in the lumber industry just can't use. So therefore they by default are waste and by default go to places and biodegrade or get pushed in the ground. So planting that next generation with intention, that they have a living usefulness and a material usefulness when I'm gone, that gives me something to work towards, and that's part of our bigger mission and bigger goal. So when if someone doesn't, if I fail and someone takes my place in this space, then hopefully that intention lives on, and which I'm thrilled, by the way, to hear from Randall, the previous conversation of the NC bill. So I'm definitely going to look that up when I get off this webinar. That's critically important. And of course, the inertia of my business, just keeping me, my head down, doing what we do, limits me from that type of exposure from time to time, which is normal for business. You just get going in your rut or your inertia, and you oftentimes can't break free of that. I don't know, as far as drying lumber as a business, we do run 2 vacuum kilns from iDry. We're very happy with those kilns. They're different machines than our Nile DH kiln, although we run all 3 of them 24 hours a day. We do custom drying for many people. We do not price things like most people. I don't price anything by the board foot. I know my energy costs on a monthly basis are $1,200 for those 3 kilns, but that doesn't really play a huge part in the way I price things. I would ask more questions about a load of lumber, about how long it's been cut is important. The lengths are important because of the Jenga game you have to play when stacking lumber in a kiln. The thickness is obviously important. You can't dry 4-quarter pine with 12-quarter walnut, even if they were cut at the same time. That's my opinion anyway, I suppose. But my questions are, how are you going to bring me this wood? Is it a wheel well trailer? Am I going to be able to pull it off with a loader? Is it stickered already? Is it stickered properly? Who stickered it? When did they sticker it? Were they dry stickers? All these things are factors, but these things are available in books. I try not to get any information off of the World Wide Web and blogs. I actually try not to spend any time in that space. But these are fundamental things to calculating time and your costs to establish what it is you should charge someone based only on, honestly, your own return. I almost would say I've preached this. I've helped many people get started in business, or I think that I have. Hopefully my help encouraged them, but my equation when starting a business, regardless of the space or the industry, is backwards math. You have to figure out how many hours you're willing to work when you've reached a place of an operating business and what it is you want to pay yourself, and everything is backwards math from there. So I'm not sure how long I've ranted and talked, but I think that I have spoken about everything that I felt was extremely important about creating a successful urban lumber business. I do feel highly successful. At the same time, I get a kick in the shin twice a day from a direction that I didn't see coming. Right now, in case anybody's curious, I've spent 24 hours of the last 2 weeks either on the phone or in a bank, because there is an epidemic of ACH bank fraud going on right now, not in our industry, just in general. So I've had 3 different working capital accounts, that's my business bank accounts, 3 different accounts compromised. I've had 6 checks from vendors over $100,000 not reach me because those checks have been stolen and compromised. I've had multiple checks that I've mailed, stolen and compromised. And it's nothing we did. It's just something else in the ethos of our culture and society that's happening. We've switched to 100% digital systems. We are not issuing a check and we are not collecting a check. We have our retail payment system in our wood store, of course. We have a wood store, we have a working wood shop, we have a sawmill location, we have a firewood company and a firewood location, and we have a furniture showroom. So we still do our point of sale digital systems there, and we'll accept a physical check there at those locations, but we do mobile deposits on physical checks. So we are no longer mailing a check, and we're asking all vendors not to mail checks. Has nothing to do with urban wood, but that's just the pitfalls of business that I didn't foresee spending my time on in the last 2 weeks. It will always happen. There's always something. Thick skin and staying hard is the only way to do it. So that's all I have. I'm always available, carolinaurbanlumber.com. We also have Instagram and Facebook stuff out there. So I hope I said something that was worth listening to.
All right, great. Thanks, Damon. So now starts the question answer period for all the panelists. If the panelists want to turn their video cameras on so that everybody can view them. And the attendees, if y'all want to type questions into the question panel box, we will get to them and allow the different panelists to respond. Frederick, you said you were going to lead off with a question to allow the attendees a chance to post a question or two.
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing I want to do is thank the presenters for your great presentations, all of you. This was very valuable. So much experience, so much knowledge in a single place. I find that really interesting. I wish I had a bucket of popcorn here. I could be listening to you for hours and hours. I would not mind, definitely not. So thank you very much. I do have a question of you, and that's maybe mostly for Randall and Damon. Damon, you just pointed to that a little. What do you think about your role as a mentor? I mean, the urban wood community is very welcoming. Are you a mentor? Do people approach you and say, hey, Damon, hey, Randall, can you teach me something? What do you think?
I'll jump in there. I got an email this morning from someone in Southern Virginia that I have a phone call with this afternoon, inquiring about drying firewood. And I've just built a firewood kiln, so someone heard about that, and I'm happy to talk about it. I balance it. At the end of the day, I have 2 children, and I want to retire. So I want to mentor people because it's empathetic. It's what I like it. At the same time, like Randall said, the people in my city that sell green lumber, I don't have time for them. I want to black sheep them so fast. And I'm sorry, I'm competitive. I've got 12 employees out here. They all want to retire too. So I'm highly competitive. I'm a warrior. Someone in a dump truck is waiting to run me over if I take my foot off the gas. That's business. So as much as I want to be a mentor and kumbaya about this, bigger partnership, at the end of the day, you have to go run your business. So that's my honest answer.
Randall, you have anything?
Yeah, that was great. I think 2 things. One, that like Damon, my first obligation is to my employees and my family, and secondly, to my clients. And so I have to take care of them first. And so if I get a lot of calls, like sometimes I get a call from somebody in Florida and they want to start a lumber business and they want to chat with me. I really don't have the bandwidth to help that person. But I do try to call everyone back. Usually that is a quick phone call while I'm driving somewhere. It's about as much bandwidth as I have to help folks. I think, too, I've been struggling with this because obviously I'm a teacher and I love the free flow of information. And so I made my website. I put a lot of information on my website, including my price structure, and then what I know about wood and some frequently asked questions. And I'm more than happy to share that info with folks out there. And also my Instagram has a lot of kind of tutorials about best practices that I found.
Great, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks. There's a couple of questions that have come in, and they're not necessarily directed to anybody in particular, so I'll let the panelists kind of fend for themselves if they have a response for this. So the first question that came in, an individual says that we are seeing a growing trend of organizations like schools, nature preserves, museums, and others that are interested in repurposing their on-site whole log urban timber as play features, benches, and other site features. Does the group have any recommendations or resources for these types of organizations to use whole log timber on site? Anybody want to jump in? Damon?
I have two cases or two scenarios. We have done multiple playgrounds, and I would almost call that philanthropic. It's not in our wheelhouse, but I did them for my children. Pictures got on, Instagram, and people asked me about it. So now we've done multiple installations of crazy. This is something you would see in Europe. Every single European city right now has whole locust or acacia log playground systems with zip lines and all that. So we've done a few of those. It's just so we can put our brand on them and tell people, it's usually at establishments with customers that can see our brand. So it's more marketing than anything. And recently, one of the large museum systems here, they just tore down an old facility. All the logs came down, and we're doing an entire educational log system at the museum. And it's quite extensive. Multiple architects are designing it, and all we are is the heavy lift. We're actually gonna dry some of the wood for internal use, and a lot of the stuff is not going to be dried and just do external use.
All right, any other panelists want to respond? Any other? Nope, okay. The next question that came in was somebody says, I am currently working on a street tree plan for a small town. What would be the most important factors for local policymakers to keep in mind to maximize the potential to recoup expenses through the sale of publicly owned urban lumber? Go ahead, Randall.
I'll just make a real quick comment that in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a line item in there about urban forestry initiatives, and that there may be some money in the pipeline for municipalities. And so check with your local legislator about that money. There could help. All right.
All right, anybody else had any experience working with municipalities and small town policymakers?
I could add something. The way it works here, obviously I'm a for-profit business, but because of the infrastructure that we've invested in and how close we are to the center city and the tree canopy, yeah, I know that everyone thinks a log has value, right? And I've heard that today, but how much value? So if I can save your truck, which burns heavy diesel and uses big tires, from driving 45 minutes outside of the city, and not only your truck, 200 other trucks, what's the value of that? Does it need to have a dollar value? My value that I'm offering 200 tree services plus the city, because I'm 5 miles from the canopy, I don't need to pay for the wood. My value is something else. And of course, I can't calculate that. Someone else can with a bigger grant, but these are partnerships. If you explain how this works, this is how partnerships work. Someone can't look at the value of something and always make a dollar figure equal value. That value has many ways to portray itself. So, keeping 200 trucks from driving 30 minutes inside a city has heavy value.
I would just jump in and echo what Damon is saying. I think that's a really important point, and something we've seen in a number of different cities is that so much of that value is reducing offtake costs, and that can be big city savings as well as lots of savings for local businesses. So there's real value there. And then also a lot of cities, as soon as they start to hear about urban wood and the value of it, they're like, oh, how do we recoup those costs, instead of just thinking about it as a cost savings? And as soon as you start to classify something as an asset instead of better disposal, you see a lot of complications. We've seen a number of cities run into issues around public bid, putting a ton of red tape on the process. And, I would encourage particularly smaller municipalities to think about this initially as exactly what Damon is saying. It's saving waste first. Think about that. It's a better waste disposal option rather than trying to monetize it or turn in some, sort of revenue generating scheme for the city. I feel like we've seen a lot of those really be challenging and play out in ways that haven't really worked. And cities that just focus on waste side seem to have, better outcomes.
Great, all great points. I'm not seeing any other questions come in. I'm going to give folks a little bit more time. They do have a question, and I'll send a follow-up email to everybody with links to the recorded webinar, and I can make sure all of the presenters' names and companies are in there so you can follow up with them directly if you have a specific follow-up question you want to ask them specifically. In the question panel chat box in there, I've posted the exit survey link that will collect just a little bit of information from everybody. Just a handful of questions that'll help kind of guide future webinars and other events for North Carolina Urban Wood Group. It'll help provide Frederick with some useful information to help with his efforts moving forward and his research. So just take a couple minutes, provide your input, and it'll help kind of us direct future events and outreach for everybody. And I hope everybody enjoyed today's webinar, and I do appreciate everybody on here. I'm getting a bunch of posts about thanking everybody for your time and all of your expertise and knowledge and how informative it was. So I think it's been appreciated across the board.
Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for helping with this webinar. I want to thank Damon, Henko, Ben, and Randall for helping with this. Thank you very much. And I'm sure our paths will cross again very, very soon. Thank you.
Oh, I did have one question that came in. I'm not sure, maybe this will be like the closing question and then everybody will go to lunch. I had someone that's written in about he's a hobby sawyer, no sales, but he would like to move into the sales market in 3 to 5 years. He's considering building / buying a kiln. Is it possible to cross-use one for hardwood, softwood, and firewood? I would primarily use it for firewood for gasification boiler right now. That makes sense. A lot of words I'm not sure about.
Henko, I'm sure you have a lot of input on that since you ran kilns, but I do not dry firewood anything like I dry lumber. That's totally two different animals in my world.
If you just look at the energy requirements from drying softwood to hardwood to firewood, your energy requirements to dry firewood is more than double than what you require for drying hardwoods, and softwood is somewhere in between. So you require the least amount of energy for hardwood, then for just softwood drying, and then for firewood. And then also the amount of airflow that you require to dry each of these is also substantially different. You don't need all that airflow with hardwoods, and when it gets to firewood, because you're blowing air essentially through a heap of timber that doesn't really have defined paths for the air to flow, you're probably going to need a lot more airflow. So yes, it's probably possible. There would need to go some thought into. You'll probably have to cater for the one that requires the most airflow and the most energy, and somehow control it backwards. It may not be the best option.
Great, thanks. And with that, we've got all the questions answered, and it's 12:31. Everybody's got lunch plans, I'm sure. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be posting the recorded webinar in the next couple of days, and I'll send an email out to everybody with that information.